Hey, my name is Avram Grossman. I'm the president, CEO, chief bottle washer, coffee maker, and taking out of the trash at E-Novative Incorporated. I've been in business since 1999, and as was mentioned, prior to that, I was director of R&D at Toshiba. I worked at Samsung as director of technology. Uh, and at Eagle Computer, if you guys remember Eagle Computer, I was the software development manager back in those days when IBM PC compatibles were first coming out on the market. So let me see if I can get this to switch. There we go. So there's the bio basically. Uh, One of the things that all of us who have been in business a long time, and most of us I'm sure have been, is experience counts for your knowledge. And here's a list of some famous quotes. My favorite one is Albert Einstein. The only source of knowledge is experience. As an example, a lady on the board of directors has problems with her microphone during the conference, and she refuses to let me come and look at it because she said her husband has a PhD in computer science. And after 5 months, the microphone still doesn't work. So there goes knowledge versus experience. You need experience to learn. And through all my years of experience working with computers, working with technology, working with people who use the technology, I came up with the idea for this book, How to Keep Your Personal Computer Running Like New, or as the original title was, How to Keep It Running Forever. Because many of us have computers that are still sitting on the shelf with DOS on it or Windows 3.1, and they still work. Yet when I install a computer at a client's office, it's usually 2-3 months later, I get a call that the computer stopped working. And I wanted to know, okay, what is it that's wrong with their computer? When I left it, it was working just fine. So I started noticing a pattern. It's how people use their computer. So why is this book for you? Well, first of all, we are all computer experts and we know what to do to help other people with their computers, but are we applying the same principles that we tell our customers for our own use? I know even in my case, I sometimes get a little lazy, especially things like password management. As we heard in the last presentation, I have a password manager that I use, but I never update it. So if I'm on the road traveling and I get stuck in Italy, having to log on to my Gmail account, which I haven't used for a while, I can't find my password, or at least not the current one. So keeping up with the technology and using it is what's important for all of us. So we all, of course, want our computers to run like new, because when they run like new, when you first buy them, you just think, oh man, this computer is just running super fast. So happy I bought this new computer. The information that we have on the computer, often we've transferred from our previous computer, which contains all of our Word documents, email, photographs, pictures of the kids, pictures of the grandkids, pictures of the dog, pictures of the previous dog, and it goes on with things that we use our computers for and becoming more dependent on them. So, of course, one of the most important things in keeping your computer data is backing up your data. And we'll talk about that. And if you're an IT person, there's always something new you're going to learn. I once had a pharmacist when I was 10 years old at the store across the street, wanted to change a battery in something. And he said, let me show you how to do it. And I grabbed it from him and said, no, I know how to do this. And he said something to me that always stuck with me. He said, even though you may think you know how to do something, let somebody else show you their way. You might learn something. So I'm always willing to learn from other people things that I think I already know, but I'm willing to listen. So why is this book and why is this information useful for your users group classes? Well, do you teach computers? Teach your members how to use their computers properly? Do you want them to learn how to use their computers properly? Do you enjoy receiving emails at 3 in the morning with simple questions? I've received one recently on a computer I installed on a Sunday morning when they opened up their office to do a retail business, and the computer screen was blank. And she said, the computer light is on, but the screen is blank. I said, well, did you turn the power on to the monitor? Oh, so those are the kind of things we want people to learn how to do themselves by thinking logically and critically about what's in their computer, where are all the ins and outs and gotchas, and how to look at it before you panic and call tech support. So in backing up your computer, what takes less time for you to do? Restoring your client's computer with all their business data on it from the ground up, or doing a system restore and have them back up and running in an hour or two. So I have customers that preferred not to have backups. That was their choice. And they got a virus, crypto locker, and guess what happened to all their data? So not paying the ransomware, I had secretly backed up their systems, and this was on a weekend that it crashed. Friday night I had a backup. Monday morning when they discovered they were crypto locker, by Wednesday I had them back and running. And now they pay for backups. So sometimes you learn the hard way. The other reason why you want your customers or your users groups to have this book and have this information is that when they do get a hold of you and ask you to help with the problem, they know how to explain what the problem is. And I don't know how many times I've spent, and I'm sure you guys have as well too, you say, well, tell me what's on the screen. What do you see? And they start describing, well, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little widget, a little X. And I go, well, where's it at? And is it in the menu bar? Is it in the browser bar? Is it in the tool bar? And the only bar they know is not the one you're referring to. So getting them up to speed on nomenclature really helps for them to better communicate with you what's going on so you can more effectively help them. And this is something that just came up yesterday in a conference, that having this information in the hands of parents and in the hands of and students and also teachers is that with COVID, more and more people are working from home. They're using their computers to talk to their family, their friends, send email, take classes. For students that are returning to school, at least in California, all the schools here are closed, or at least Orange County. And so literally all the students are online with their computers. And the last thing a parent wants is for the computer to crash, probably because the kids have been playing video games all summer, and the computers are loaded up with viruses and Trojans and malware and spyware, and whatever the kids are typing in for their homework assignments, somebody in another country is possibly watching what they're doing. So we want to be able to get them to clean up their computers, free them of any viruses and Trojans and spyware, and make sure the computer is going to keep on running smoothly through the school year. So it's never more important now to make sure our computers are working properly. So in the book, I go through a series of educational processes, starting off with, well, what is a computer? What is the hardware that makes up the computer? And I'm not going to go into all the detail because, number one, you people already know all this. And number two, I want people to buy the book and read it for themselves. But I break it down into what's the chassis, describe the different form factors and different types of computers that are on the market. And we talk about the power supply. You know, most of them are internal for desktops. Some of the smaller block computers or brick computers use a AC to DC transformer. Then I break down what's on the motherboard and the components on the motherboard with the CPU, where the CPU fan is, memory chip sockets, and kind of what is it that's in that box. I'll talk about the cooling fans because later on I'll talk about dust. And of all the things that make noise in a computer, it's either going to be the cooling fan, or gathering dust and bearings burning out, or the CPU cooler, and possibly the hard drive, but not very likely. If it's making noise from the hard drive, it's already too late. Then we talk about a little bit on the USB ports, because a lot of people don't know what the USB ports are and why the U stands for universal, which means you can plug things back in. Almost any USB port will work for any USB device. And I'll mention it later, but I'll also mention it now, that is, I've seen people, when they take their computer apart, go to move them, they literally label every USB cable with a number, so they plug it into the same USB port that it came from on the back of the computer. So bless their hearts for doing that, but it's not necessary. Then I go into more of the firmware and the operating systems and the ROM BIOS. So that way people have an idea of, when they turn the computer on, in that first minute and a half, 2 minutes while it's booting up, what's going on behind the scene. It's not just, blinking a light that says starting Windows. There's a lot going on. And so I talk about how you can actually dig deeper into your computer and see what it is using Task Manager, see what's running, see what shouldn't be running, and get familiar with the applications and the system programs. And that's actually a good way for them to eventually learn to recognize, is there a Trojan running, or a keylogger, or something running in the operating system in the background that shouldn't be there, and how to spot it. So one of the things we talk about is how your computer works when it's working properly. We talk about how to turn the power on and wait, obviously logging into your computer. And if you don't have a sign-in with a password, you should. It's highly recommended. Mention what's the microprocessor doing while you're sitting there waiting to decide what to do, what's happening in the background. So again, we talk about looking at the task manager and the process manager, and again, teach them what's happening inside your computer, and getting an idea of what's happening when they're typing and when they're not typing, or if the Windows browser is open, what's happening in the background. A lot of times people call up and they say, oh, when I bought my computer, it was running really fast, but it seems to be slowing down. I must have a lot of pictures on my computer or a lot of programs on my computer. I'm going to start deleting things to speed up my computer. And the answer is no. It's not how much information you have on your hard drive that's going to slow down your computer. It's how much information is being loaded into the system memory, and like tasks and functions that are in the background. And so we teach them how to look inside the operating system to see what tasks are running, and how to get rid of some of the tasks if you really don't need them. One of the biggest ones, I think the most obvious, is using the 3 or 4 different web browsers. Is if you start up a web browser, you may have 2 tasks running in the background for Firefox. If you do Google Chrome, I've had as many as 15 to 16 background tasks that are busy doing other things while I'm trying to search for a new washing machine. They're letting everybody in the world who sells washing machines, hey, Avram's looking for a washing machine. So when I go to my next computer or log on to my mobile phone, I start getting pop-up ads for washing machines. And I go, how the heck do they figure that out? How do they know what I'm doing? Well, that's how, by looking at the browser. So as a course, I usually don't recommend using Google browsers because they're number one in spying on you. So once you understand how your computer is working properly, it helps to give you a better understanding of what to see when it's not working properly. So in the book, I talk about one of my number one complaints or issues that I always look at. And one of my favorites to demonstrate is excessive heat and dust, because the computer is designed for running at ambient room temperature, probably up to about 95 degrees, 96 degrees Fahrenheit. When it starts getting warmer than that, things start to not necessarily be optimal. Maybe the newer computers run more efficiently at higher temperatures, but we do want to keep our computers running as cool as possible. And dust is one of the things that can contribute to excessive heat. Dust will build up over time, settle on the fans, on the fan blades, on the CPU fan blades or cooling blades, and deposit themselves on the memory chips and on the other components where the airflow is being impeded for removing the heat off those chips. And in the book, I talk about how thermodynamics affects the stability of the chips. And even though, again, the microprocessors and chip manufacturing technology has improved tremendously over the last 15, 20 years, we still should be concerned about heat buildup, just to be on the safe side. One of the things I recommend regarding heat is leave your computer on. Don't turn it off unless you're going to go away for the weekend or not use it for a couple of days. If you're like me, I have 4 computers that I use every day. I just leave them on. I maybe log out and turn the monitor off. But if I come back in the morning, I just switch the monitor power on, wiggle the mouse, and I'm back up and running. Don't have to worry about booting up and all that. One of the things that happens in turning off the power is the temperature cools down to ambient, and the chips actually move a little bit. You know, expansion and contraction of the plastics that are in the chip and the silicon dies underneath, it moves ever so slightly, causing thermal stress. And turning the computer back on, having it get hot, causes thermal stress. Turning it off, letting it cool down to ambient, again causes thermal stress. And it seems like possibly over time, chips can fail. Whereas I found if I leave my computers on all the time, they seem to not have problems with chip failure. So I talk about power to the computer, why power is important. I've seen people actually plug their power into a wall that on the other side of the wall is the kitchen where the refrigerator is. And so every time the refrigerator cycles on and off, it sends surges into the power supply of the computer. So I mentioned why you should use surge protectors and spend a little extra money and use battery backups as well, because that has the surge protector built in. And if the power goes out, or either a brownout or a blackout, you're good for a 10-minute blackout or brownout, and that keeps your computer running, and it will shut down normally by sending a signal back to the computer saying the battery is about to give out. And why is that important? Well, we want to prevent hard disk errors from occurring. And the hard drive is very important because that's where all your data is. So abruptly turning off the power to a computer is not a good idea. And I've seen people literally press the power button and hold it until the power shuts off on their computer. That's one way to do it. I've seen people reach down and turn off the power strip to everything at their desk, thinking, "Oh, we're shutting down everything. It's convenient. Just press the power switch on the wall outlet, and that shuts everything off." It also very likely is going to cause glitches on the hard drive to occur. A lot of them can be recovered when you boot back up, but you're going to get one day that isn't. And then you're going to get the BSOD, blue screen of death, which still occurs. So by the way, I did a little calculation on a 5¼ inch hard drive at 5,200 RPM, and the outside of the disk is traveling 657,000 miles every year. So that hard drive is making tracks. And then I also talk about backing up your data and why backing up locally is okay to a USB drive, but why you probably are better off backing up in the cloud. One of them is encryption. So if you get a crypto locker type encryption algorithm, it's not going to make it out to your cloud storage, which is actually, by the way, not completely true. I was using Carbonite, and Carbonite will back up your encrypted files out to the system. So if you don't catch the encryption quick enough and stop the backup, your backup out on the server will also be encrypted. The good news is that if you call them on the phone, Carbonite will be able to restore your backups of your backups of your backups up to about 30 days. So they were able to go back for one customer that had this happen and didn't notice it until they finally decided to call me and say, hey, can you take a look at my computer and tell me what this message means? And by then, the backup had already taken place, and we were fortunate to be able to restore the day before worth of data and get them back up and running. So backing up is important. All these little steps take a little extra time, but believe me, it's a lot easier than replacing your computer and a lot easier than replacing all your data. So looking inside the computer again, we talk about how to shut the computer down properly using the start menu and go to shutdown or log out if you want to log off. In opening up the computer, we talk about how to disconnect the cables on the back, how to open the chassis, and not be afraid to look inside. This isn't brain surgery. You're probably not going to hurt the computer. And I've actually done courses at small companies that have employees that really don't know much about the computers. They really don't know much about the computers, and they don't want to know what's under the floor. So I basically insisted that we have a course to show them why putting your lunch bag next to the computer where the air intake is not a good idea. And then, of course, the big one is cleaning out the dust. And I have a little video I prepared just to show you guys something interesting. I find a lot of people, actually, even the IT professionals that I work with, don't necessarily do this. I do this for my own computers maybe once a year. And I have one customer that has a farm that grows sod out in Chino, and they have a mobile trailer where their office is, and they're literally in the middle of a big field. And if you want to see dust, I've actually opened the computer up and had everyone come out and look when I blow the dust out. And it's literally a dust storm where you have to blow it and walk away and let it settle. So let me run this video for you and watch me clean out the dust from my computer. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to take your computer apart and blow out the dust. So here's my own personal computer sitting on the floor, perfectly exposed to all the dust, dirt, and dog hair that happens to be coming by. So the first thing we're going to do is shut down the computer properly. Having disconnected the cables, I relocate the computer to my workshop where I remove the side cover. And what do we have here? Dust. And look at that CPU fan. It's loaded with dust. Normally I don't use the dust spray because it's not strong enough. I usually use my air compressor, as shown here, or a vacuum cleaner with the nozzle turned around backwards. So now with the computer outside where there's a light breeze, I'm going to start off by spraying the duster on the back of the computer where the power supply is. Working my way around to the front, I'm actually blowing the dust into the chassis. So this isn't quite doing the job that I want, so I'm going to take out the air compressor nozzle and get in there and spray everything really well, multiple times going back and forth, starting off with the power supply and the fans in the back. For me, there's something personally satisfying knowing that my computer is clean and dust-free, especially on the fans, which eventually can build up enough dust they start to squeal and burn out bearings. If you have a dog in the house, you might find this inside your computer, and if you have a cat, you're going to be in for a big surprise when you open up the box. Now with all the dust adequately cleaned out, I'm going to carefully replace the side cover, making sure it fits in snugly on its tracks. And now, putting the computer back into its place under the desk, I'm first going to vacuum and clean the dust that's been accumulating behind and underneath the computer. The USB ports back in. It really doesn't matter which one you plug into. The only ones that really make a difference are the speaker and microphone connectors. And make sure you don't block any air inputs. You want to keep everything free flowing and open. And we're done. Just turn the computer back on, log in, and thank you for watching. Okay, so I hope that was entertaining. You got to see the dust come out of my computer. And if you do this on your computer and you haven't done it before, make sure you do it outside. There'll be a lot of dust coming out. And if you have a cat, like I mentioned in the video, you're in for a big surprise because those cat hairs get into the fan and suck up everywhere, blocking vents. And I'd be curious if you do blow out the dust in your computer, let me know what you found, even take pictures. And then this video I'll be posting on my website at E-Novative.com. I have a section about the book, and there'll be some more videos as I work on a blog. So let's see, where are we here with control? So in the book we also talk about the software, and we go into again, as I mentioned, why is my PC running slowly? It's not necessarily going to be because of the files on your computer, even though I do mention how files become defragmented and will slow down the disk I/O access. However, all the new Windows operating systems run system defrag automatically once a week, so not like the Windows 7 and before days where you had to remember to go in and run defrag. It does it for you automatically, but it is something to be concerned with. I talk about the system programs that are running and loaded in memory, then how to look at the applications, processes, and services and what they are and why those are important to know what they are, so you can look at them and see if you see something running that you shouldn't have running. Quite often I've had an application that when I go to click and start, it won't load. It just sort of blinks and goes away. And then you look into the system processes and find out the application is already running. Skype was one of those that has done that for a long time. In previous versions, at least, I couldn't launch Skype. It turns out there were 4 copies of it already running. Once I exited those out or terminated those processes, then Skype would start normally. So for a customer, I don't want to get a phone call on a Sunday afternoon saying they can't start Skype, something's wrong. I want them to be able to think through the process and look first at what it might be before they start calling me. The boss likes that because then it's a lot cheaper for him as well too. Then I talk about malware, spyware, Trojans, and how things can get into the computer, even with the best of cybersecurity and malware programs, anti-spyware programs, things still get through. I talk about why not every program, not one program is going to protect you against everything. I also talk about running system scans where you just load a program to run one time, exit out. So I use super anti-spyware, for example. I load it up once a week, run it, clean out mainly cookies, helps keep the tracking down. So here we talk about choosing an antivirus program. There are lots of them on the market. I talk about why the free ones are, you get what you pay for. Usually they're free. You might get a good one, but then they're constantly going to ask you to upgrade, or if it does find things on there to be removed, you have to pay to have the spyware removed. So there are some free anti-spyware programs out there, but I do recommend a couple of them that I like to use. You know, they cost $35, $45 a year. The one I use is ESET, and I can get 3 computers loaded. I get a 2-year subscription, so it's, I think, $35, $45 for 2 years for 3 computers. I talk about cookies, how cookies are used for tracking what you're doing, how malware gets in, how Trojans get in, what the difference between a malware program is, what a Trojan is. Then I delve into the operating system disk cleanup, and after you do a system upgrade, to go in and do the system backup or Windows backup delete, which takes up space on your hard drive, and then why it's important to run Windows updates, either automatically or manually alert you, but make sure you keep your Windows updates current for security reasons. So one of the things that I learned from a college calculus professor is he would talk about integral calculus, and we would sit there and look at him with our eyes crossed, and he would say things that to remind us to pay attention and listen, even if you don't understand what it is that's being talked about. One day, a year later, 2 years later, whenever, you'll be bending over to tie your shoe, and you'll think about something he said, even if it was a joke, and you'll go, aha, that's what he meant by that integral calculus equation, or something that he may have said. So the light will eventually go on. It'll eventually make sense. So when I talk to people, I tell them, you may not understand what it is I'm referring to today, but please pay attention, because one day you will know what a Framistam is. And when you hear someone say, hey, your Framistam is broken, you'll go, ah, I know what a Framistam is. You can't fool me. So knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you can be the master of your own personal computer and be the master of your own IT universe. So if you have any questions, I'm reachable through E-Novative Incorporated. Again, I'm the chief bottle washer, chief technical officer. Whatever needs to be done, I do it. I have a website at enovative.com, and there's a link to the book on Keep Your Personal Computer, where I have some more information, some downloads, and I'll be doing the video posting. You can buy the book if you want on Amazon. There's actually, as of 3 days ago, a Kindle version for a cheaper price. And once I figure out how to give discounts through Amazon, I'll pass those on to you guys so you can buy the Kindle version at a discount. So again, if you have any questions, hopefully they've been forwarded in, assuming that there's still people online listening.
Oh, they are.
Okay, and I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, we'll jump to the one nice demonstration on the cleaning of the desktop. What's your recommendations on cleaning a laptop?
If you can open the laptop up, and a lot of them you can't, especially things like Apple MacBooks, is I just use the lower pressure air compressor can and just look for the air vents and try to blow out the dust from all directions. If possible. Same thing with the keyboard, by the way. I turn the laptop upside down and blow the dust out of the keyboard. And you'd be surprised what kind of crumbs and cookies that you ate last year are still in there. I do the same thing with my desktop, by the way. I clean out the keyboard upside down. I use a trackball with a billiard ball type thing. I blow that out every couple days. Or if you have a mouse, turn it over and clean out the little mouse ball that rolls around. Maybe even take it out and clean the dust out of that. So laptops are a little harder to get into, but at least make some effort to blow the dust out if you can.
Good. A question was, as we watched your video, what pressure are you using on that air hose to be blowing out stuff?
Yeah, I have that. I use that for paint spraying in the garage. I had it set to 85 psi, but I actually usually have it set to 100. So it seems like using 100 psi doesn't blow the chips off the board. They're pretty well soldered down.
Okay, well that's a good one. So then, explain to us the pros and cons of why you blow it out instead of vacuuming it out.
Well, you can do the vacuum as well too. The vacuum doesn't necessarily get everything off the surface. And actually, sometimes depending on how bad it is, you can use a combination of using a bristle brush and lightly brush over the surfaces with a vacuum cleaner, then turn the hose around on the vacuum and blow the dust off. And if it's really bad, I get a microfiber cloth and wipe everything down and get things off the surface. Sometimes the dirt does stick. You may have noticed in the video, the CPU fan, the plastic edge still had dust on it that wasn't coming off even at 85 psi. So I would go in there with a microfiber cloth and wipe the dust off of it and then blow everything out once again. So.
Okay. Referring back in the beginning when you're talking about processors and heat and stuff, do you have any kind of recommendations, or are there utilities or software that can be used to report the heat levels?
Yes, a lot of the computers will come with some type of software, and I have one that I've been using called CPUID Hardware Monitor, and it's a free program. I update it every now and then. And I'm looking at it now, actually. It goes through your CPU and all the system sensors, and it gives you all the information you're ever going to want to know about your computer, voltages, current drain. It's going to give you temperatures of the various packages. So, for example, I'm looking at my Core CPU. It's running at 29C. And the package on the outside is at 32C or 91 degrees. It talks about your clock speeds, airflow sensors. It's going to tell you the RPM of your various fans. So if you look at it and start writing things down, the next time you'll notice if the fan's running slow, you have buildup taking place. So I use this one. It's a free program called CPUID HW Monitor.
That sounds good. Going back to a previous part in your presentation about shutting off the computer, what are the pros and cons of sleep mode versus powering off?
Well, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. From the Eagle computer days, the old days, when sleep mode meant it wrote an image of your memory to hard drive. And I don't know for sure if it still does that. I have a feeling it does, unless you have a solid state memory system, which again, I'm not sure what it does for sleep mode, but at least what it used to do in the older operating systems is write an image to the hard drive, and when you power back up, it restores that image, which takes time. So I typically don't use sleep mode only because it's a lot faster to basically, if you just walk away from your computer, that's sleep mode for me.
That's enough. Does Windows 10, the current one, really need a malware program added to it?
I'm not sure what's in Windows 10 that will keep you from needing some type of additional malware program. I know the bit of what's it called. I'll think of the name here in a second. The one that comes with Windows is pretty good, but again, it's not perfect. And so I use it as the primary, or one of the primaries, but I also add in ESCT, which runs in memory as well. Now, if you remember in the old days of antivirus, you couldn't have more than one antivirus program running at a time because they would share the interrupts. And one computer, one antivirus would say, "Oh, I caught an antivirus," and the other one would say, "Oh, I caught an antivirus too, so I'll let you take care of it." And the other one would say, "No, no, no, you caught it, so you take care of it."
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, nothing would get taken care of. Everything would slip through the cracks. Now, most of the antivirus programs are designed so they can work in conjunction with others that are loaded. But again, I try to keep it down to just the two, the one that comes with Windows 10, and then something else that you purchase, like a Norton or Symantec, or if you want to trust the Russian Kaspersky system, use Kaspersky. Any of those will work. One of the things, by the way, I tell people is I try to use some that aren't as popular, because it's just like locks. If you're going to be a thief and break through a security system, Schlage is probably the first lock you'll learn how to pick. And so if you're in cyber spyware world, Norton is probably the first one you'll learn how to work around. So I try to get some that are a little bit less known but are highly rated.
Let's see. I've got to read my things here. This is a toughie, I think, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway because of your background.
We love tough questions.
How do you know which of the system programs should be running when you look at your...
Well, that comes back to experience and looking at it. And I actually, for a long time, was looking at it or either writing down what I saw or doing a screen copy and sort of trying to make myself aware of what should be running and what isn't. The other thing that I do a lot of is do a Google search. So if you see a program running and you're not sure what it is, I put it into a Google search. And there's, I think, process.com is a website that reports on programs that are standard, programs that are legit, and programs that use the name, that mask the name, but can be spyware, and others that are just plain spyware. And a lot of times you'll see stuff running in the background that are system drivers for something that you're not using or used to use. Like you may have uninstalled a program that you tried out, but its drivers are still being loaded. So you can identify them, find them, and uninstall them. So it's just experience is what is your guide for that. And having a good memory.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you look through the task manager, you will see multiple incidences of the same thing running, but they're all doing something different. So you don't.
Yeah, and there are some, mainly the ones that run the operating system window screen. Let me see if I can find that on mine real quick. Let's see. I know you should be able to see this.
Mm-hmm.
So here are all the processes that are running, and like these COM surrogates, those are all they're the same thing, but they're running different tasks. And one of the things you can do, and I've done this just for fun, is kill something, like here's Fort a client. Well, I'm not using that, and I don't know why it keeps on running. I'll just end the task. And usually it doesn't kill your computer. If you do the Windows browser ones, it will shut down. There's Splashtop running in the background that I use. Spy Hunter is a program that I run when I reboot, but I usually exit out, and it looks like I forgot to exit out. So I'll go ahead and clear that out. Seems to want to restart itself. So part of this is just getting experience. Here's a little thing called Tiny. This is a database program. Here's my Windows Defender. That was the name I was looking for. Windows Defender comes with Windows 10. And let's see. So here are the ones that run a lot. Service Host.
Yeah.
And you'll see lots of copies of that. This one seems to expand a little bit about what it's servicing. And if you shut one down that's the wrong one, you can restore just by rebooting your computer. So you're not going to necessarily kill your computer by shutting these off. There's an acro tray, which is something that pops up all the time. This one, if I kill, will kill our Zoom conference. So, you know, be careful, but be daring and experiment around and see what's there. Kill it and see what happens. If you look at your performance, you can see a lot of times people say my computer is running slow, or I do this. I start my computer up and go, why is it taking forever to start the browser? So I look here first and see where this is at, and then I'll go back and look at what's running and see if there's anything there that I don't want or shouldn't be there. So it's not a hard question to answer. It's just a long answer to a question to answer.
I'll give you one question before we end up. I finally figured out what the question was. If I have a hard drive that stops powering up, what's the most affordable recovery service to get my data off of that drive?
Well, I've used a data recovery company once, and I paid them in advance, $1,200, and they handed me back the drive and said, sorry, we can't help you. So I bought a little hard drive recovery system for $20, and it was basically a ATA or SATA drive connector and a power supply, and it converts it to USB, and plugged it in and managed to get all the data back off the drive. Now, if it's shutting down, depends on why it's shutting down, or if it's powering up and shutting down. Is it the controller inside the computer? And if you do what I just mentioned, do it externally with an external power supply. If it still shuts down, well, then it's possibly something on one of the chips on the hard drive itself, and maybe removing it from the enclosure and cooling it down may help keep it from powering down long enough for you to recover. So again, it's a trial and error. Work your way through different processes to see which one will do it for you. That's probably just throw an extra answer in. You know, the old question with why is it that when I do something that used to work, it's not working? Reboot your computer and then call me back.
Right, right. I
So
taught that to all my teachers.
Yeah.
And I think that you would probably say that the most affordable recovery is backing up your data.
Exactly. In the long run, it saves a lot of time for you, for your customers, especially for businesses. I can't emphasize how important backing up critical company data is, and even better, backing up the server with an image that you can restore the image, bare metal restore, and have them back up and running in an hour. So there's a lot to learn as a computer professional.
Mm-hmm.